Nashville Predators run up against a brick wall against the Florida Panthers in a 4-1 loss. Is this team's confidence shook right now? And is it time for the Preds to make some roster changes? All coming up today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start out with a special hello to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydays you're doing into every single show. We love you guys, and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at the Hockey News.
Also want to mention today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Ann, a 4-1 loss for the Nashville Predators to the Florida Panthers, although two of those goals were empty netters right at the end.
True.
Bad stretch of games for the Nashville Predators, going back to Saturday against the Coyotes. But I will say, Ann, over the last two games, at least the Nashville Predators didn't shoot the puck into their own empty net like the Pittsburgh Penguins did last night.
Hey, we saw y'all. Yeah, we did. Now, I do remember years ago, Nick Bonino scoring an own goal, but it was off of the back of UC Saros' skate, taking it down. But I will tell you that for as disappointing as this loss was against Florida, there was joy in the morning watching the replay of the Pittsburgh Penguins score an own goal on a delayed penalty, putting them down 4-2. There was much rejoicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the little things.
See, everybody is like, Chris Letang, what are you doing? That was, kind of a ill-advised pass by Letang, but Evgeny Malkin, that's the effort you're going to use for a pass back, in front of your own net?
Get the puck. That's your job.
Look, the Nashville Predators don't have a lot of room to talk gas about effort plays. 4-1. The final score last night against the Florida Panthers. An awful first period in which the Predators were outshot 14-4. Florida Panthers turned it on in the second period again. Sam Reinhard got a goal about halfway through. But then, Ann, I thought the game turned a little bit. Nashville Predators put some good effort together. Jeremy Lauzon scored on a deflected shot. And it looked like at that point, hey, the Predators might have something going here. They were really, I think, controlling play at this point. And then things changed in the third when Carter Verhaeghe scored to make it 2-1 on a really, really solid shot, I thought.
Yeah, it was
and
a
then
great shot.
Brandon Montour with the Philip Forsberg Western Conference Finals special, the empty net goal from all the way down on the other side of the ice. Matthew Tkachuk added another empty netter to make it 4-1 in favor of the Panthers. And your one word to describe last night's game.
I really agonized over this one word, but I think that I've kind of come up with the best way to sum up what I took away from this game. And I know that the Venn diagram of people who love hockey and people who knit probably has a smaller center circle, but I'm going with hear me out. I'm going with a knitting word, and that is cast off. So when you knit, you cast on, you put your stitches on your needles, you knit whatever you're knitting, but then you have to create an end. You have to do special stitching called casting off, and that creates an end to your knitting. It's how you kind of seal the stitches so that whatever you've knit doesn't come and unravel. And my grandmother taught me to cast on. She taught me to knit, but we never got to the lesson on casting off. So the knitting that I have is just long rows and rows and rows of something that I can't cast them off. I need to learn how to do that. You don't complete a project without casting off. And I feel like the Nashville Predators are not able to cast off. In the second period, especially, the first period I think was just terrible by the Predators. I don't think they played their best game by any stretch. The second period, they really got going. They started generating offensive zone time. They started generating some chances. The problem that they have is that they don't finish. They're not casting off when they get looks. They're not finishing on shots. They're not finishing on power play opportunities. And I think what's happening is you're seeing their record unravel, because this was not a game where the Nashville Predators were blown out. This was a game that was 2-1 with 2 minutes left. This was a game where the Predators down the stretch had quality looks that they didn't finish. So for me, I feel like this was a game where the players just didn't cast off. They didn't finish.
Yeah. For me, and I think that's a great take, because it just seemed like, the Predators built momentum, got themselves back into the game after a rough start, and then just had trouble sealing the deal. I mean, how many plays did we see where, first off, I think credit to Anthony Stolarz in net for the Florida Panthers, a great game, because the Preds had a lot of good chances. But, there's also the chance where Tommy Novak was looking at an empty net. All he had to do was one time the puck in, completely missed the puck. Yet another time where, I think Stolarz wound up making the save, but I can't remember who was the player. Might have been Ryan O'Reilly, but had the puck on his stick and had Stolarz beat if he would have just maybe lifted the puck or roofed the thing and just couldn't get any lift on it. So there were some, self-inflicted stuff. And I think there is a small Venn diagram of knitting and hockey. There might be an even smaller one for Survivor and hockey.
Okay.
So my one word is Jake. Now, anybody who watched this past season Survivor, there's a character named Jake who is basically Charlie Brown. The season was just on the bottom the whole season, kind of made mistake after mistake, and then finally got going at the end. He got a hidden immunity idol. He got himself in the Final Four fire making challenge. And it looked like, hey, he's finally turning it around. Like he's got momentum. Like things are finally turning his way. But by the end of it, the other two players that were there with him at the final three were just too strong. Their resumes were too long. Their list of moves were too long. They easily dominated the game better than he did. And at that point, he was just like, hey, well, I've had a good last little bit here. I had a good last couple of weeks there right in the middle, but there's no way I'm beating these two. And that felt like the Nashville Predators last night. Look, they dug themselves in a hole early. They dug themselves then out of it as the game went on. I thought really good momentum, but at the end, it's just they couldn't match what Florida had. They didn't have, the skill. They didn't have the resume to beat Florida. They, couldn't nail their chances when they had. And by the time, the final buzzer rang, Florida had just put up too much of a clinic for the Predators to really have any shot there at the end.
Yeah, this was a weird game to kind of come away from. I felt like it was a weird game to kind of come away from with a very clear feeling, in the sense that I felt like the Predators in the second period really matched a lot of what Florida was able to do. Now, Florida was without Barkov. They were without Forsling. So it wasn't the full Florida squad, but obviously Sam Reinhard was there. And I felt like they were able to match it well. And it wasn't a game where it was too little too late. It was just enough in just enough time, but they didn't finish it. So it's like, on the one hand, you drive away from Bridgestone Arena feeling like, man, we really hung in there with a team that is a cup contending team. Like Florida that's the goal. That's where they're headed. And so you have to feel pretty good about that. Like, hey, we were able to match them in a lot of ways, but the frustration is we didn't win it. And so it was hard to come away from this game. It really took me some time to figure out, like, where do I land with what this game tells us about the Nashville Predators right now? Because, there was some good in it, but it's also the same frustrating result. And at what point in a reset does results start overtaking progress? It's a tough game.
Yeah. Here's a big question that I think we're going to talk about moving forward. Where's the Preds' confidence right now? Because there was a lot of, that was a lot of talk about the post game, was like it's a confidence level. And the other question we have to ask, is it time for some changes in the Nashville lineup? I'm not talking about, tearing it down and trading UC Saros and Roman Josi, but I'm talking about getting some new blood in there. It feels like we're past that time. Both of those topics are topics we're going to tackle coming up here in just a little bit. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. On a happier note, the Detroit Lions, are one win away from a championship game appearance in Las Vegas. I guess if you're a fan of the Chiefs, the Ravens, or the 49ers, I guess you have a reason to celebrate too. Hey, how would you like to go to the big game and have $100 off? Seems too good to be true, right? Not with Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And right now, all users get $100 off when they buy a ticket to the big game with code VEGAS100. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time is the place to take the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly where your seat is. Your all-in prices show you your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without all of those hidden fees when you go to check out. And Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, sometimes even after it starts. So it's the place to go if you want to find last-minute tickets to an event near you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Again, right now, all Game Time users get $100 off a ticket to the big game with code VEGAS100. Terms apply. Just download the Game Time app and use code VEGAS100 for $100 off. Or if you're not going to the game, because, you may not have an extra couple $1,000 laying around, you can still use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So either way, you're a winner. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Ann, let's talk about the Nashville Predators' loss to the Florida Panthers last night, 4-1, the final score. And let's talk about this team's confidence level. Yeah. This was something Andrew Brunette alluded to post-game.
Yeah, he did. So this is what Andrew Brunette kind of had to say about the confidence level of the team after the Florida loss.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys probably lack a little confidence right now. I think we had generated a bunch tonight, or some tonight, enough to put us into at least an overtime game. We're not finishing. And it's kind of been a little bit of the story here the last week or parts of the season here. And, that's why you'd like to get some bounces for some of these kids and maybe you feel a little bit better. So we haven't been able to do that. Leaving points on the board, kind of a similar story to the Arizona game where you had some opportunities. We get rid of that first and put ourselves in a pretty good opportunity going the third at home and got nothing out of it.
You get them to get that confidence back. I mean, in the NHL where every game is big and every opponent is tough. I mean, how do you get that confidence?
It's hard. I mean, that's the hardest thing, especially for your young players. It's tough, and we've all gone through those roller coasters of losing it and how do you regain it. I think as you go forward, you start figuring out. But right now, we're kind of in one a little bit that way. But like I said, just sometimes it takes a bounce, it takes a lucky goal, it takes a couple guys getting hot at the right time, and it's kind of contagious. Right now, it's kind of going the other way.
Yeah,
Is that true, Ann? Do you agree with that? Where maybe it's just a case of seeing is believing? Somebody like Tommy Novak gets a goal there and then, kind of turns it around. Is it that simple? Is it just finding one or two players to get hot and sort of rub off on the other team or rub off on the rest of the team?
I think it can be that simple because when you look at players, the young players that the Predators have, Novak, Evangelista, Tomasino, Parsonen, we have seen glimpses of ability. So I don't know that it's necessarily a question of do they really have the ability. I wonder if it is a confidence thing. And even in talking to a veteran like Ryan O'Reilly, he was talking about the Arizona loss. And he said, we let Arizona get on the board first, and all of a sudden you start gripping your stick a little bit tighter. And you start pushing maybe a little bit where you didn't need to. And I think that's a little bit of what you're seeing offensively with some of these younger players where it's been a while. Luke Evangelista had a couple of goals recently, but he kind of goes in spurts where he has some goals and then kind of a little bit of a non-factor in some games. You look at Tommy Novak, he had a late goal versus Arizona. He had a goal January 12th, but the last goal that he had before that was November 4th. Part of that was injury, but in his first 14 games, he had 6 goals. In his 22 games since coming back from injury, he's got 2 goals. And I do think that it is something that does generate confidence. And right now, if you look across the board at these younger players, if you look at Novak Parsonen, you look at Cody Glass, you look at Phil Tomasino, they're all doing some great things, but what they aren't really doing with consistency is finding the back of the net. And if you have no one going, I love the word that he said. He said contagious. And I do think that confidence is contagious. But when you have no one really playing with that kind of offensive swagger, it's hard to spread it. And I think that's where the Predators are. I think they're stuck in that spot.
But it's funny because they had players doing that. How many times over the past month or so did we talk about Philip Forsberg, on a career best year? How many times did we talk about Ryan O'Reilly having, on pace for his best statistical season since his Stanley Cup year in St. Louis? How often do we talk about Gustav Nyquist having one of the best scoring seasons of career? How many times do we talk about those 3 guys and being like, they're carrying the team, just need someone to step up? Just need some people behind him.
Right.
And it hasn't been the case. You've had star players doing what they needed to do, like, putting the puck in the net at a great level, carrying this team, but no one else, to quote Andrew Brunette, it's not rubbing off on anybody. Apparently.
I wonder, and this is a question that I want to throw out to you, because this is one of the things I wonder, with the Nashville Predators right now, the way everybody's playing, if you shut down the Nashville Predators top line, you pretty much shut down the Predators offensively. Now, Jeremy Lauzon.
What happened yesterday?
Yeah, happened yesterday, but you really shut them down offensively. For how good that top line is going, is there a point, Nick, at which you would say, you know what, we're going to break up Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist, and we're going to put 2 of them together, and we're going to throw a Juuso Parsonen with them. We're going to throw, a Phil Tomasino with them to see if they can spread that. Because right now we do have a line that is, they're one of the best lines in the Central Division, top lines in the Central Division, but it's not spreading. So do you break up that top line to see if some of that can be contagious with other line mates? Would you do that?
Isn't that what the big, I guess, criticism of Nashville has been for the past couple of years, is you get chemistry together going with 3 guys, and then instead of being like, oh yay, these 3 guys have chemistry, we're going to let them cook throughout the entire year and sort of get familiar with each other. It was always, oh great, this guy has chemistry, and now that he's hot, we're going to have him try to use his hotness to build chemistry with someone else. Wasn't that the big complaint about the line blender for the past couple years?
Absolutely. But is there merit to it in a situation like this? Because
no,
we're getting to a point where that top line is not effective, in the sense that all the opposing team has to do is shut that one line down. So if nobody is producing, does it make sense to go, you know what, let's put them with someone else and see what happens?
So here's, I guess, my thing on that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take Philip Forsberg, for instance. He's having an elite season right now. I guess in terms of the Nashville Predators scoring history, he's having an elite season. You say he's having an elite season. We need to get, we need to get Tommy Novak going. You put Philip Forsberg with Tommy Novak. Is he going to have the same success, the same level of success with Tommy Novak next to him instead of Ryan O'Reilly, who has been a big part of Philip Forsberg's success this year?
Yeah.
That's the same thing. You talk about Ryan O'Reilly being hot. You talk about him, really hitting his offensive stride. Does he still put up those numbers when you put him next to, I don't know, Yakov Trenin and Luke Evangelista? Like,
Right.
Does he still have that success? Do you trust those two guys on his wing to be able to finish plays like Philip Forsberg, like Gustav Nyquist have done? That's the thing. Like, you're counting on, them to sort of rub off, where it's the guys that are in that position. Look, I mean, Tommy Novak had a chance at a really good goal last night. He had a really good setup and I can't remember who made that pass, but all you have to do was tap the puck into the wide open net, and he couldn't finish that.
Right.
You've had other people, get good offensive chances and can't get out of their own way in the offensive zone. Yakov Trenin, 2 offensive zone penalties last night. And, and at that point, it's like, okay, is it really that we need to get these guys going by putting them with, a star player? Or is it just that we actually just need the people underneath to step up, like from the second line down, to step up and play better on their own? Because if you start doing, triple bypass surgery on this Preds lineup, and you're putting your hottest player here because you're trying to get someone else going, or you're putting your number 1 center, down in the second or third line because you want to get these 2 guys on opposite ends going, then all of a sudden you don't have any top line, and you don't have any line that you can rely on for that go-to scoring. I think that is the biggest concern with doing something like that.
But do they have what they need, leaving it alone, to get the wins they need to get? It feels like Bruno said, we're really in one right now. And I'm like, dude, you are really in one, because I feel like continuing to do what you're doing, I think the results recently have showed teams have figured it out. Shut down O'Reilly, Forsberg, and Nyquist, and you're going to win this game.
Yeah.
You can't continue to keep doing the same thing and get different results.
Yeah.
And yet I see your point. Like, you're also going to sacrifice something if you mix it up. So the Predators are in one. And if this is a confidence problem, it is a sticky wicket to get a young player through. It really is. So how do you do that? And that's where I think maybe you put them with a veteran. I don't know.
So there's another option.
There is.
Predators. Is it time to just get some new blood on the roster? I think that's something that's worth talking about. And we'll talk about that coming up in just 1 second.
First, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by the Sleeper app. Friends, we are halfway through this season. We're still trying to sort out what's going to happen with the Nashville Predators. But regardless of where the Predators are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. It's the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper's our number 1 choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do on Sleeper is pick whether players will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, shots on goal, and more in a given game. For example, tonight, you could pick, will Dylan Larkin have more or less than 0.5 points? Will Adam Fox have more or less than 1.5 shots on goal? Will Alex Ovechkin score more or less than 0.5 goals? To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. That's right. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can win big. Download the Sleeper app and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you're going to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That is code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availabilities.
All right, Ann. So before the break, we talked about, sort of the confidence level for the Nashville Predators and playing a role in not being able to finish those chances against the Florida Panthers. We talked about, shuffling lines, bringing some guys, in and out. Here's my thing. The Nashville Predators have done that. Like, they've rotated guys in and out of the lineup, other than the top line, which has been the biggest reason the Nashville Predators are still in a playoff spot right now. They're the only reason this season hasn't just plummeted underwater. We've seen guys coming in that lineup. We've seen guys struggle, like Luke Evangelista and Phil Tomasino, Yakov Trenin, Juuso Parssinen, all of these players, sort of come out of the lineup healthy scratch for quote unquote a reset.
Right.
Come back in the lineup, do okay for a while, and then, slow down and need another quote unquote reset. We've had the same combination of healthy scratches, both up front and on defense, for this entire season. We're just kind of shuffling the same people, the same faces in and out, just with different places in the lineup. Is it time, Ann, to sit down, look at the Milwaukee Admirals, and bring some people up? And at that same vein, is it time for the Nashville Predators to look at the main roster and make some hard decisions about players they do and do not envision possibly having a future on a winning version of this team moving forward?
Yeah, I think that it is that time for a couple of reasons. One, the trade deadline is going to force the issue. The tricky part is the Nashville Predators, where they are in the standings, makes this feel like these are bigger decisions, because right now the Predators are still battling for a wild card position. They are still looking at a chance for the postseason, which was not expected, but it is where they are. So yes, on the one hand, I'm like, maybe you have come to the end of the line in things that you can do internally with the roster that you have, and you need to start making these decisions. But you have to know in the back of your mind, in for a penny, in for a pound. And the decisions that you make right now may cost you an opportunity in the postseason. Is Barry Trotz ready to say, you know what, we need to see something different? And if it costs us the postseason, it costs us the postseason. I don't know if that's where he's at. I do think the trade deadline is going to sort of force that. And I do think that you're right. You look at some of the players on the roster who have been in and out of the lineup. And I look at players like, and look, I love him, but I look at players like Yakov Trenin, and I think you have to make a decision. This is somebody that's had several of those reset, healthy scratch games. He had a tough one last night. This is not necessarily the Yakov Trenin that we thought we were going to get. In 21, 22, he had 17 goals. And I think we all thought, hey, look, this is a depth 20 goal scorer. That hasn't materialized. It hasn't certainly materialized this season. And I think you've got a long enough list of history there to say, you know what, I'm just not sure this is going to work. The trade deadline's coming. Look, somebody wants Yakov Trenin. Regardless of how poor or how challenging this season has been for him, he offers something, especially to a team that's looking for a very specific skill set in a depth piece, who is looking to make a run in the playoffs. I think those are some of the players that maybe you need to start making calls about. I'm a little more hesitant when it comes to making decisions on players like Parssinen or Cody Glass.
Well,
it's have the body
guys. Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I'm with you. Like, Dante Fabro, in and out of the lineup. When he's in the lineup, he's partnered with Roman Josi on the top line. Are you in or are you out?
Yeah.
Is Fabro somebody you see long-term? Hey, this is a player that can partner with Roman Josi on the top line and be consistently important for this Nashville Predators team 2 seasons from now. You've got a body of work from which to judge that. Maybe it's time to make that call.
And maybe here's the biggest thing to me, Ann, is it's somebody who didn't even play last night, and it's Tyson Barrie.
Yes.
How long are you going to let this go on?
Yeah.
I mean, you're basically just playing him at this point to basically try to get his trade value going.
And it's not working great.
And it's not working right now.
Yeah.
How long are you going to do that for?
Right.
Like that's the first domino that needs to fall. And I'm almost at the point, if you're David Poile, Jesus Christ, if you're Barry Trotz, yeah. It's a force of habit right there. If you're Barry Trotz and you're the general manager of the Nashville Predators, like you've been for the past 11 months, are you just saying, look, we're not going to get what we wanted to from him, and we don't necessarily want to wait for the deadline. What can we do to just get him off this roster right now?
Yeah.
Does it take being like, we will hold half of his salary for the rest of the year, which I'm not confident they can, because I think you can only retain salary 3 times.
I think, there is a limit to it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, I think, so Barry would be the third, because you're holding Ekholm, you're holding Johansson. Do you just say, look, we will hold half of his salary for the rest of the season if you just give us a 5th round pick?
Yeah.
Just give us something, because at this point, there's one roster spot that you're not going to use.
Right.
Let's go to, Dante Fabro. Like, again, are you in? Are you out? If not, what's his value on the trade market right now? Because there might be somebody in Milwaukee, Spencer Stastny, Mark Del Gaizo,
come on.
Maybe a couple other younger players down the road, like an Adam Wilsby, after another, year or so.
Little Tanner Molendyke, anyone?
Tanner Molendyke around the corner, Ryan Ufko around the corner, that you're like, okay, realistically, we would rather see them get a chance than a Dante Fabro, who we know is not going, we know we're not going to re-sign. We know we're going to try to trade. Just pull the trigger there, and up front, like, how do you feel about Yakov Trenin? A bad game from Yakov Trenin last night. A stupid game from Yakov Trenin last night. It's like, and he's been in the lineup. Like, are you really going in on that? Or is there someone else in Milwaukee, like an Afanasiev, maybe a Joachim Kimmel, maybe a Zachary LaRue, like that may have not just, give some new blood in the lineup, but may have a chance to sort of get his feet wet to play a big role in a future season. These are the decisions that Trotz and Brunette are going to have to start making here over the couple of weeks, because you and I were talking before, you don't want to disrupt anything that may tank the Predators for the rest of the season. But at the same time, the people they have right now aren't helping them get to the postseason. So I would rather take a chance, potentially tank, and just see what we have in some of these young guys. And if it works, then, look, all of a sudden, some young players that we think are going to be a part of the Preds' future, just help them get over the hump and into a playoff spot.
Yeah. And it all boils down to, where is Barry Trotz's vision set? Is it on, hey, we're going to make the playoffs in this first year of the reset? Or, hey, I'm looking 2 seasons from now and we're going to make decisions right now that are going to benefit us 2 seasons from now. And it'll be interesting to see what he does, because I think that's going to tell you what is he focused on right now.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. And Barry Trotz, by the way, did give a little bit of insight as to his trade deadline plans. We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's Locked On Predators podcast. So stay tuned for some full trade deadline talk. Who do you trade? Who do you keep for a little bit longer? And what might you get from some potential suitors around? So we'll have a trade deadline look ahead tomorrow on Locked On Predators podcast. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at _NS Morgan on the social media feeds. You can find me at penaltyboxradio.com to read all of my written work. That's going to do it for us on the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Back tomorrow with some trade deadline talk. We'll see you then.